Moms are amazing at tracking down hard-to-find items. Library books, socks, you name it. But sometimes help is welcomed. Care.com makes it easy to find babysitters near you. Sitters with the experience and skills your family needs, like after-school pickup and homework help. You just post a job for qualified sitters to apply. And since all Care.com caregivers are background checked, you can feel confident about interviewing and hiring. To get the child care help you need, sign up now at Care.com.
This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks in Columbia. 107.5 The Game on 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach and 100.5 The Game in Florence.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game, 107.5 in Columbia, 100.3 in Myrtle Beach, and 100.5 out in Florence. 4 days away from kicking things off between the Gamecocks and the Tar Heels coming up on Saturday night. Guys, we have a depth chart. It's finally here. You said it, yesterday, that last year it came out Monday night. Yesterday it comes out Monday afternoon. Should we be expecting Monday morning next year? Yeah. Do the trends keep going in that direction?
Work our way down. Might be Friday the week before.
Maybe.
I actually texted, so I didn't thank him in text, so I'll just thank him right now. I texted Steve Fink yesterday, and I was like, hey, happy game week, first of all. Had to get the niceties out of the way. Said, should we expect a depth chart tonight again? Because I was going to have basically what I was guessing it would be ready, and then I was going to quickly edit it to match the real thing. He says, actually, it's already out. I said, what? So then I went to GamecocksOnline.com, and sure enough, it was already updated. So
we graduated from the depth chart drill to the actual depth chart itself. Exciting stuff.
It was a different kind of depth chart drill, typing that thing up as fast as I could.
I thought I finally got Wes. I was like, ooh, depth chart. I saw the email.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got it. And he's like, I'm already on it. I'm typing it up now.
Well,
so
thanks to Steve Fink.
It dropped in the middle of me and Colin doing the halftime show yesterday.
Good content.
At 1 o'clock. We were going to talk about week 0. I know, Wes, cover your ears. And he's like, hey, we got a depth chart. I'm like, week 0 is going to have to wait.
That's right. So, Wes, main takeaways from the depth chart.
Well, I would say, actually, for the most part, what we expected. And, obviously, you can go back far enough and say 3 months ago, maybe you wouldn't have expected this, or this. But as far as the way things had trended into preseason camp, for the most part, what you would have thought, we even, Chris, I think you said it, and I think I agreed with you. Will we get the oars at both tackle spots is something we were talking about yesterday before it came out, and sure enough, that's exactly what we got. They did not even list left or right tackle.
Just offensive tackle.
Offensive tackle, offensive guard, and, of course, a center. But, so Jackson Hughes and Sidney Fugar, by all indications, that's the left tackle spot. And then Kason Henry or Tyshawn Wanamaker, that's the right tackle spot. So, once again, we find ourselves here on the GC Takeover Hour talking about the offensive line. So, that was as expected. I think that for me, the only real, I would say, surprise was the oars on the defensive side at kind of those defensive end / edge spots. They listed it as OLB this time for whatever reason. That's an edge spot. And I'm not really surprised about the oars where you have Tyreek Johnson or JT Gear. Gear's got, he's been banged up now as well. So you have some injury factors there that I think factor into that. The other side, though, Chris, just kind of served as a reminder to me, okay, we've penciled Jordan Strong in here mentally ourselves, but he is still coming off of a major knee injury. So, yes, he was out there day one with the ones when we went out there, but we do have to remember that that's the case for him. And I know you had picked up a little bit of info that, hey, don't count out Brian Thomas Jr. So, Brian Thomas Jr., a guy who has had, by all indications, a pretty good camp in his own right.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like there were maybe two guys. I'm trying to make sure I'm not leaving somebody out. There's probably 2 or 3 guys on this roster on defense that you could almost consider an extra starter, if that makes sense. So we talked about one being TJ Sanders. Now, TJ wasn't an or, but he's going to play a lot. And Wes was talking about this yesterday. If you slide Tonka Hemingway out to edge situationally for whatever reason, TJ Sanders is playing even more. So TJ's one. David Spalding, when he's healthy, is kind of one that falls into that category maybe. Keenan Nelson Jr. was listed as the number 1 guy right now, and part of that is because Spalding has been banged up again. But Brian Thomas Jr. being an or, and Desmond Umezulu, who I now have corrected my pronunciation for, by the way, Wes. Did you see that in the pronunciation guide? We've been getting Desmond wrong, been doing him wrong. Not Desmond Umezulu. Desmond Umezulu.
Can I just say Desu?
Sure.
That's what I've been doing up to this point.
But yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. is someone, and I did pick up a little bit of info, like they've been very happy with his progression, right? So last season, he was probably playing at, the 215 to 220-pound range as a true freshman, very undersized. He's still undersized, but he put on probably 20 pounds in the offseason, and the staff seems to feel like he's going to help a good bit at that edge spot as a pass rusher. So, and Dez has obviously been what they thought he would be too. So that may have been still, even knowing that they've been happy with Dez, that they've been happy with Brian Thomas Jr., I was a little bit surprised because it seems like Jordan Strong's been full go. He's been out there with the ones. I mean, all our viewing windows in practice, which of course were limited. I think I remember Jordan being out there with the ones.
I think all of them were out there.
The other one, we figured would be more of a crapshoot, and I do think, to your point, Wes, the every single one of the guys mentioned at the other spot as an or have spent a spell in blue during the preseason, so I think that's left it a little bit more up in the air.
Yeah, and obviously with these 2 edge spots, and again, one of them's listed as outside linebacker, but you're going to see rotations there, so all these guys are going to get their playing time. We just don't know who specifically the starter for those spots are going to be.
Yeah, and I don't know why they went OLB this time, maybe to confuse people. But first of all, I finally thought I had learned how to. I started out Desu, and
good move.
Then I was like, no, I'm gonna be an adult here and say his name correctly. And now I'm realizing I've got to reteach myself. But that's for another day. I don't know about you, Chris. I'd be kind of surprised if Strong isn't out there first.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like he will be the starter, but sounds like lots of rotation there. And here's my thing, man. Depending on how banged up those other guys really are and what their situation is going through this week, I'm rolling Tonka out there at the other spot. Like,
I like it.
Let's just throw Tonka out there. TJ, Boogie can be in the middle, Strong on the outside, rotate those other guys in. Pass rush situations, roll Brian Thomas Jr. in there on the outside, slide Tonka inside. to me, that's probably getting your best four on the field if it's a situation where you start to get into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you're like, man, these guys still aren't 100%. So that's one of those unknowns. We don't have their medical situation right now. Obviously, Shane Beamer going to speak at 1:30 today. We'll get an injury update. We'll see how much he gives away on that. But such a luxury, though, to have Tonka Hemingway. I'm reading our Gamecock Central football preseason superlatives, Chris, and spoiler, you have Tonka Hemingway as defensive MVP this year. But a big reason for his value, other than just being a really good football player, is that lets them do so much as far as if you have a little issue here, slide Tonka out there. If you want to just say, hey, we're going to be super deep and rotate guys pretty liberally inside, then you play Tonka inside. So his versatility, TJ Sanders' versatility as well to an extent, is just such a key thing for Travian Robertson. And then if he's on the outside, obviously Sterling Lucas.
Well, and you mentioned luxury. Luxury to have TJ Sanders there who's good enough to start. If Tonka Hemingway didn't exist, who would be your other starter? There is absolutely no doubt that it's TJ Sanders. The staff really, really likes this guy. And so I think, Wes, when you're even talking about getting your best four on the field, when you've got somebody with Tonka's skill set, we know around the time of media days and preseason, the talk was from Tonka, the staff, hey, I'm an inside guy. But circumstances are a little bit different now, right? There's still some questions there, Edge. There's TJ Sanders continuing to come on in the preseason. There's the versatility that Tonka Hemingway has. So it certainly wouldn't be a surprise if we see that. Another wild card in this, guy that didn't make the depth chart, is Drew Tuizama, of course. Mm-hmm. And so Shane Beamer has mentioned he's going to play. Clayton White said, I don't remember paraphrasing, we expect him to play. We think he can play. Now, what does that mean? Well, he probably makes the travel roster, right? Mm-hmm. You got to think of that. You're not getting your full boat of guys. So he probably goes to Charlotte, but how much does he play? Does it increase the amount of snaps that he may take? Because if some of these other guys that have spent time in blue, again, all three guys at the one spot that were ours as starters, does that increase the likelihood that we see more of Drew Tuizama in game one?
I'm not saying this is in any way an ideal situation, but Chris, if they had to play Drew T quite a bit, I do wonder how much does, again, the luxury of potentially having, let's say he's out there at the edge spot, the defensive end spot. You have Tonka on the field inside with him. You have Boogie on the field. You have Jordan Strong on the field. Not that it's ideal for a guy to be yelling assignments to his teammate while trying to get lined up himself, but I do sort of think there's some value in having a bunch of veterans beside him, to where if it came down to it, you could rotate him in. You could say, hey, you could put him in situationally, but sometimes you can't make subs in college football. Sometimes they're getting to the line of scrimmage with a quickness and saying, we're going to keep you in your current personnel package. So having a guy like Tonka or Boogie right beside him, though, being like, hey, this is you on this play, maybe makes you feel a little bit more comfortable with what you're going to do, because obviously a guy's been here 2 weeks. So, it's not necessarily ideal, but he's played a lot of ball. This is not a freshman. He's physically mature, and I think that very much helps. By the way, guys, I know we're going to hit a break here in a second, but Statawar, one of my favorite follows on Twitter, whether you care about analytics or not, he has very interesting advanced statistical previews of games where they give percentages, chances that one team will beat the other. He has released his today for South Carolina, North Carolina, which I want to hit on the other side.
We'll take a look at that coming up. You're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
Is it weird having a million things to talk about and the only thing he wanted to talk about is Bravo?
Yes, and it's always weird. It's like when I went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner and thought that this was my chance to make a change, and they were like, well, enough about change. Stand up. And then I have so many questions for Howie that had nothing to do, and he was like, so scandalous.
Give Them Lala wherever you listen.
On the game.
Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks in Columbia, 107.5 The Game. Also heard on 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach and 100.5 The Game in Florence.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you. As Wes mentioned just before the break there, Parker Fleming, Stats War on Twitter, one of the best follows when it comes to advanced analytics in the world of college football, did release his advanced stat sheet for the South Carolina and North Carolina game coming up on Saturday night. Slight edge for South Carolina when it comes to the win probability, but as we've seen with so many of these spread or so many of the lines for this game, definitely a toss-up pick 'em.
Wow, just steal my thunder, Tyler. That's what I was about to tell everyone. How I've never seen one closer than this, I feel like. Projected score, Chris. South Carolina, 30.41 points.
Wow, that's going to be hard.
North Carolina, 30.27 points. I mean...
So South Carolina's going to win by, I've already forgotten the numbers, 0.14?
That is 14 tenths of a point.
Yes.
14 100ths.
14 100ths of a point.
Yeah. 14 tenths would be like 1 point and 4. Anyway. That is close.
Very close.
That is very close. Can you give us some context?
No.
What is the reasoning? No.
I have no idea.
None. Okay. Whatever formula Parker uses.
Well, here's the thing. We need Wilhelms. Wilhelms would be able to provide this.
He can speak this language.
I could give some insight, but I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from for a week 1 game. Like how this obviously has to be highly, highly dependent on some numbers from last year. Sure. But how much is it adjusted going into this year in terms of, I mean, taking out what guys lost, adding in transfer. Like I don't know. Most of his stuff, from what I've seen, is purely statistical. So as the season goes along, the model is gonna get better and better and better. As of right now, I mean, you look at it and it's kind of like what you would expect if you were looking at the two teams last year. North Carolina, extremely efficient on offense. South Carolina, pretty efficient on offense. Then North Carolina, just awful on defense.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely horrendous. And then South Carolina, pretty good on defense against the pass, not good on defense against the run. So just looking at that, it looks highly dependent on what we saw last year. As we know, these are not the same teams as last year. But I think just further locks in to me the idea that nobody really knows how to frame up this game about what to expect. Like, not that games are played on paper, but at least they give you an idea percentage-wise. Hey, these teams play 10 times. This team probably going to win 7 or 8, just as a random example. In this case, I think most people look at this game as a coin flip.
Yeah, and I think even when in the transfer portal era, it may become more and more difficult to predict games. It's hard to predict games anyway, like eye test, computer, whatever. Especially games that get closer and closer to, if a team has a 99% chance to win on a computer, they're probably winning. Mm-hmm. But when you get to 60, 50, 40, like on a computer, that typically means that's going to match your eye test. And so I feel like the consensus is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Wes, but this is probably going to be a close game. I mean, I don't know that any of us sitting around fan. Maybe there's some North Carolina fans out there that think they're going to win by 50. Might be some Carolina fans out there that think that they're going to win by 60. Generally, the reasonable take is it's probably going to be a close game. You got some new faces. You've got some guys stepping into bigger roles. You have new offenses. I think it's kind of tough to predict on a computer model, yet it does have it really close. And I think that's what we're all expecting, right? And even some of what you modeled out based on last year is kind of what we're expecting this year from some teams. I think going into this game, we expect points to be scored, right? You expect South Carolina's offense to be more consistent, and there's some weapons, and there's Spencer Rattler, and you feel like they're going to score some points. You got Drake May and their receivers, their running backs. You feel like there's going to be some points, and then both these teams obviously have some questions on defense. Even if both teams get better on defense, is it going to be just an overwhelmingly big difference from last season? Maybe not. So it is an interesting model, and I know I haven't settled in on my final game score. I guess have we settled in on when we're doing that? Friday, probably. I guess here.
It is Friday. Yeah.
Sounds good. I haven't settled in. What I do know is it's going to be close. That'll be my sticking with my team.
That's Chris's favorite phrase.
Yes.
So again, these are from last year, but to go a little deeper into it, maybe a couple of keys to the game glaring out here. Parker does something he calls third and fourth down success, which kind of combines the two. I think if you go for it on third and don't get it, but you still convert on fourth, that's a success. Like it's not. I don't know. I don't think that's just a combination. Like you just added up the two variables there. North Carolina offensively was 7th in the country in third/fourth down success. South Carolina defensively last year 117th in the country in third or fourth down success. So that tracks, right? We saw South Carolina struggling to get off the field at times when it did not involve turnovers, and then North Carolina just obviously staying on the field quite a bit. Something that swings in Carolina's favor, field position, 119 in the country for UNC, 6th in the country for South Carolina, which I think is directly from South Carolina's success on special teams.
It's not because they were just moving the ball up and down the field all the time, right?
Yes.
So imagine that. Imagine this picture, though. If South Carolina can be more consistent offensively, even if you're not scoring, limit your turnovers, move the chains a little more. Sure, definitely you got to score some more points, especially week one. This is a game you got to score some points. If your special teams can be on par with what we saw last season, and then if your defense can improve some. Now, your schedule, I think, is even more difficult than last year, which is saying something. But that does give you, there are legitimate reasons, like you can get there, you can see a path to all those things happening. It's not unreasonable to say, well, their special teams could be as good, their defense could be better, the offense could be better. You can see all those happening.
Right.
I think the question is just whether or not they do. Does one of them happen? Does two? All three? If all three happens, that's your formula for, the type of season that you would like to have.
Right. We continue to break this down a little bit more. Let's hear some of what Mac Brown and his assistants had to say yesterday coming up. You're listening to Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
You're talking about. Sponsored by Love Chevrolet. On your home of the Gamecocks. In Columbia, 107.5 The Game. Also heard on 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. And 100.5 The Game in Florence.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 107.5 The Game here in Columbia, 100.5 in Florence, and 100.3 in Myrtle Beach. Presented, as always, by our friends at Firehouse Subs. What's up, Florence? What's up, Myrtle Beach? Glad to have y'all here on the network. Again, Wes Mitchell here, Chris Clark. Chris, we were talking depth chart before we went to break. Let's keep it right there, man. Any other surprises or maybe not surprises, just noteworthy things on this. I found myself kind of trying to look ahead at how this depth chart might change. Maybe even not literally. I don't know how Beamer does update it a little bit more than, say, Will Muschamp did. And we got more than Nick Saban gave people.
A depth chart.
Yeah, we at least got a depth chart. So I'm happy. I have no complaints. And I plan on kind of mentally updating it, if not actually updating it on Gamecock Central as we kind of see how things play out in reality. But I kind of found myself saying, all right, we've got 2 running backs on here. Who would they hypothetically have put third at running back? Mm-hmm. Beamer mentioned kind of, all right, we know DeCarrion's starting, but there's still been a lot of competition. He said this last week. There's been a lot of competition to be in the rotation behind him. So if Joyner goes out there first, which we fully expect that's going to happen, and Juju goes out there second, who's the next guy at running back? How close is a Vakari Swain at cornerback to also being in that rotation? Who, if there's 2 backups listed, which obviously there are, at positions like safety and cornerback, who's truly next man up? Like, I think if DQ or Nicky would have to come out, my impression from things I've heard is that, yes, Jalen Kilgore would probably be next man up at safety. We did get a glimpse at a practice a couple weeks ago when O.D. Fortune was not in there for the drill. Emory Floyd was next man up, so to speak, at cornerback. So we do have a better feel for some things here, but there are still things that we will not learn until Saturday evening in Charlotte.
I was curious, and like you said, no huge surprises here. We went over a couple of them earlier, just slight surprises. But out of the rest of them, it's a little bit more just like, okay, that makes sense. So let me go to special teams. Marion Brown, punt returner, no or. Just Marion Brown, Eddie Lewis behind him, seemingly at number 2. Now, this was a question. We know that Pete Limbo had said a non-negotiable, Xavier Legette, kick returner, that we knew that would be the case. I wasn't sure what we would get at punt returner as far as the depth chart. Either I figured we could get a Marion Brown number 1, which we got. We can maybe get Eddie Lewis number 1 because of his experience doing it at the college level at Memphis. Limbo's familiarity with that. Or. I figured we maybe could have gotten that. And so Brown appears to have won this job. Now, is there ever a split? Maybe. Does it change? Maybe. Do we see both of them back there at times? Pete Limbo has more than hinted at that possibility. I think we could. And so that was one thing where you kind of have maybe a little bit more clarity. Another one, Wes, that just sticks out to me, Nicholas Harbor, officially listed as a quote-unquote backup in one of the spots. I was curious to see, would Peyton Mangrum make the 2 deep? He did not in this instance. And would Nick Harbor make it? If he did make it, would he be, say, an or? And so we know Nick Harbor has missed some practice time later in the preseason. So how much he plays, we'll see. But I thought that was noteworthy, at least, that he did make it as a backup.
Do you read at all into Harbor being listed behind Juice Wells and then Omega being listed behind Legette? Like specifically, because when Wells has missed time, which we know he has, it has primarily been, it was kind of, Juice and Omega Blake and Nicholas Harbor have been taking reps in place of Juice Wells, kind of at that particular receiver spot, was the impression I got. Mm-hmm. Now, they're both mentioned on here. They're both listed, but at different spots at receiver. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Is this the one spot that might be getting into some semantics or...
possibly.
I think that's possible. Because, I think, like Peyton Mangrum, is he not in that rotation? Maybe, as a 6th or 7th guy. I feel like he might be in there. Eddie Lewis making it made sense. We figured he'd be in that top 6. But the way Omega Blake has played, we figured he'd be in the top 6. And look, with Nicholas Harbor, we know the staff is going to utilize him. How they utilize him is a fascinating question. How much? Game one, how much, right? I think that role will probably grow from right now, sitting here today, to, game 8, just made up a game number. It's probably different. I think there's going to be an expansion as he continues to develop, as he continues to learn. I'm not surprised that Nick Harbor made it. Like, I joked about this yesterday, but imagine a depth chart without Nick Harbor on it. I mean, the Firehouse Subs text line, Love Chevy phone lines would be lighting up right now.
Where's Nick?
People, why isn't he on there? Is he?
Yeah.
Some people would take it too far. Like, is he a bust because he didn't make it immediately? So we need to continue to temper the expectations. But in all seriousness, not a huge surprise he made it. I think it would have been a talking point if he didn't, but I don't think that would have been super noteworthy if he didn't, if that makes sense.
How many guys not on this too deep? Because it is too deep at most spots. Sometimes you got enough oars that it becomes a 3 deep, which is making Preston Thorne shiver in the corner about it. How many guys not listed on this 2 deep play offense or defense, not special teams?
Okay.
Play on Saturday in Charlotte.
Ooh.
I'm going to say DJ Braswell, not listed.
So you think Braswell's taking a snap at running back
on Saturday night?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I like that.
You don't think so?
I don't know if I'm there yet. I hope so. I want to see it, but I don't know if I'm there yet.
That's, to be clear, that's not like somebody told me, oh yeah, Braswell's going to get 15 snaps. That's just an opinion. That's just a educated opinion, but an opinion. So, I mean, I think Mario Anderson and Braswell will take a snap. So there's 2.
Okay.
In my world, there's 2. I would have thought maybe Vakari Swain, but I don't know. It sounds like there's a couple of guys he would have to pass to do so. And again, maybe Swain's a guy that pops up on special teams, but I'm thinking more along the lines of offense or defense. Let's see, Drew T. That would be another.
Yeah. I mean, that might be the easiest one.
Yeah, unless they're just messing with us, saying he's going to play.
Possible.
But no, I think he'll play. I think you're right. I would think maybe along the way, a 5th defensive tackle potentially gets in.
Yep.
I mean, you rotate a lot.
And Elijah Davis or Xavier McLeod.
Yes.
Or both.
Yeah. Or Jamal. Hey, Jamal Weiss was in the mix with that 3rd team for our practice viewing windows. So I don't want to completely say he couldn't be in that mix too, especially if you really want to like play out this exercise. Tonka Hemingway, if Tonka does have to play some outside at that end spot like we talked about earlier, does that sort of that puts you deeper into your depth at defensive tackle? If they run some 3 linebacker stuff, you maybe start to get into, who's playing Sam is, Bam Martin Scott. He's been banged up, but that's a guy who's not listed, but at least in preseason or before we got to preseason camp, we were in summer workouts. You're here, and this guy has made some steps forward as well. So I don't know his status at this point, but that would be another guy to keep an eye on.
If healthy. And Pup Howard being a freshman, we know he's been impressive, but he also missed some time. Mm-hmm. He's good now, but he missed some time. So I think Bam, maybe you trade out those 2 in a way. Bam is one. A couple other guys that came to mind, I'd mentioned Peyton Mangrum. That might be one. He didn't make the 2 deep, but I could see him taking some snaps at receiver. Kawan Banks.
Yeah.
If there was a mild surprise, if you're only listing 2, I can see, Kawan has played some corner, he's played nickel, and your 2 nickels are David Spalding at the backup spot, who's played a good bit here when he's been healthy, and then Keenan Nelson, who started in the bowl game. So it makes sense. But Kawan Banks, I could see.
You thought he'd pop up somewhere?
Yeah, and so I think he fits this mold of being someone that, is not on the depth chart, but if we see him out there on Saturday, okay, there's Kawan Banks, he's playing.
Yeah, not a shock. Especially if North Carolina is going to spread it out as you would expect and throw the ball around and put a bunch of receivers on the field. That would be a case where maybe you get to some what you would call like some dime defenses and putting another DB out there and passing situations, I think. So, I would have thought we would be saying a Brian Thomas Jr. potentially, but Brian Thomas Jr., he made it as he's a co-starter, technically.
Yes, he's a big co-starter.
Yes.
You got 6 guys starting at the edge spot.
That's depth.
Well,
we'll find out.
One way to put it, yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll see. I think we can read into this, but at the same time, we'll see what happens there moving forward. All right, guys. On the other side, we'll hear from Mac Brown. It's Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game, presented by Firehouse Subs.
The game will be at the beach, in the PD, and the Midlands. That almost covers the whole Palmetto State. In Columbia, 107.5 The Game. Also heard on 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach and 100.5 The Game in Florence. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks in Columbia, 107.5 The Game. Also heard on 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach and 100.5 The Game in Florence.
They've got skill. They've got some new offensive linemen, so it's really hard for us to tell who they are right now. And they've got a new offensive coordinator. So I think that so much of that will have to be our defensive staff adjusting to what they do. They opened up early with a new quarterback against us in the bowl game. He slung one deep, and they hit it for a touchdown. So they really got us on our heels, and we never came back from it. And like Art said, they'll pull tricks on you to get momentum going. So they're a really well-coached team.
Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 107.5 The Game here in Columbia, 100.3 in Myrtle Beach, and 100.5 The Game in Florence. Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, Tyler Head here in studio. And that was, of course, the voice of UNC head coach Mac Brown talking about the South Carolina offense, but also, guys, sounded like he was talking a little bit about the special teams in there, too, talking about you got to be aware of tricks. You got to be aware of, I don't know if it's still stuck in their craw a little bit that DeCarrion Joyner started at quarterback in that game and then hit him with the deep ball right off the bat.
He actually mentioned that earlier on in his press conference. He didn't say DeCarrion Joyner by name, but he said they stuck in a quarterback we weren't expecting, and he hit us for a deep ball.
Yeah, so
they were totally unprepared for couldn't fathom that was a possibility. And so now, man, does this bode well for South Carolina? Because now you probably aren't starting to carry on Joyner at quarterback. We know that. But man, the offensive line, don't know who those guys are. You don't know. You got a new offensive coordinator. It seems like they're maybe even more confused this year.
In a way, that could play into South Carolina's advantage because you don't know what necessarily Dow Loggains can throw at you. And certainly you can look at his game film from the NFL. Of course, that was heavily influenced by Adam Gase and his time as an offensive coordinator there, but he's literally never called a play in college before. You look at Chip Lindsey and what he did at Central Florida or Troy, and you get an idea of what North Carolina's offense is going to look like. But really, South Carolina's could go in any direction from the standpoint of what North Carolina's trying to prepare for.
I mean, wouldn't it be the best troll job in the world if they just put Joyner in there at QB on the first snap and threw a deep ball to the tight end? Just
phenomenal.
Run one play in the triple option. Just one.
You're on that hill, aren't you, Tyler?
I am.
He and Colin are all about the triple option for some reason. I don't know. I thought you were a Georgia fan. Like you should hate the triple option just because.
I do hate the triple option. So from a standpoint of not preparing for that would throw them completely off guard.
Yeah, that works in NCAA football 2014. I don't think it. You can run option concepts. Put Lenore Sellers out there. That'll throw them off.
Hey, just one play. That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
Just throw them off.
We'll give you a speed option to the boundary.
Hey,
that play always works.
Speed option's the best play in the history of football. That and the wheel route are undefeated.
Always work.
I think. But Mac Brown, I feel like there is even still a little just kind of tinge of Lou Holtz in there. Like, we don't know what they're doing here. New offensive line. Like, he's still kind of playing up the underdog mentality without actually saying it.
Yeah.
He can't do the nobody's picking us thing anymore. But there was a little bit of, gee golly, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, did y'all get that vibe? Was the whole press conference like that?
It kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit.
Okay.
No, he definitely hit on it a few times.
He's playing that card. You're right. He's struggling for material because of he can't do the whole, win one for the Gipper thing.
Well, that quarterback that surprised them 2 years ago is playing running back now. So
I think they do know that. Did he mention that, Tyler? I don't know if we have that. Does he realize that DeCarrion Joyner will be a running back this year?
He is aware DeCarrion Joyner is a running back.
Is he aware that he's 229 pounds now?
Hopefully so. By the way, real quick, Firehouse Subs text line, got a text. Josh at the Firehouse Subs text line, he wanted to know if anyone had a player comparison for Joyner, running back comparison. Wes, you're an expert at this.
Don't put that on me.
Well, no, I thought you would just go to Monterio Hardesty's player comparisons.
Yeah, but I don't remember what he said.
Oh, okay.
So,
Joyner really likes Alvin Kamara, former Tennessee, New Orleans Saints. So he gave him that one.
I think that's what Hardesty said.
Yeah.
I think it was Kamara.
He said he thinks that, he's like, DK thinks he's Kamara, so I'll give him that one. And then also mentioned Josh Jacobs. Man,
that's right.
If DeCarrion could be like, I don't know, a 3/4 of both those guys, that would be
probably get the job done.
That would definitely give Mac Brown some.
Yeah, Chris is. I just looked it up.
Concerns.
Chris is absolutely right.
Yeah, that would give him some concerns for sure.
I love the comps, man.
Oh, those are great.
Got some Emmitt Smith in there for Mario Anderson,
Austin Eckler for Juju.
Yeah. But I do get it. I think it's cool. Like, give them something to thrive, to strive towards.
Sure.
It's kind of like, all right, he even made a point to be like, hey, guys, I'm not saying they're this player, but at the peak of their powers, this is what I'm hoping they can strive to be.
Well,
stylistically.
It's like, I see what you do and what you do well. Here's somebody that you can compare yourself to and learn from.
Yeah, watch the film. Juju McDowell, who people are kind of dismissing, I think, a little bit this year.
Definitely under the radar.
Going to play a key role. Austin Eckler and Hardesty used that one to say, hey, you need to gain a little bit of weight here. Nope.
It's our dramatic outro music.
I love dramatic conclusion to the show.
We have upgraded the music on the show. I'm excited.
Yeah. We're getting better.
All right.
That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with Terry coming up right here on The Game.